It's one of the tightest races for Congress. Incumbent Dan Donovan holding a squeaky thin lead over his Democratic challenger Max Rose in what is considered a Republican stronghold in Staten Island. We're one-on-one with both candidates this morning. Here where they stand on the issues.
Now, from 42nd and 2nd, this is Pix 11 News Close-Up with Marvin Scott.
Good morning, everyone. Democrats, they're hoping for a blue wave in Tuesday's midterm elections, enabling them to take back leadership in the House of Representatives. Now, there are several key races that hang in the balance, and one of them right here in our area, the 11th Congressional District. It's the only seat in any part of the city currently held by a Republican, Dan Donovan, who is now seeking his third term. But Max Rose, he's out to become the first Democrat in a decade to win that district, downplaying his party affiliation in heavily favored Trump territory and presenting himself as an independent Army veteran. Congressman Donovan calls him a carpetbagger who is out of touch. Before we hear from the candidates, my colleague Henry Rossoff takes a closer look at the highly contested race.
Is the government hurting your business?
Business is getting better.
While greeting business owners on Staten Island, Congressman Dan Donovan doesn't shy away from talking about where he agrees and disagrees with President Trump, including on two big votes against the failed Republican health care bill and the ultimately successful tax bill.
Good to see you again.
Even still, the two-term congressman was helped by the president's endorsement during his primary win against former congressman turned convicted tax cheat turned candidate Michael Grimm.
Well, they know I stand with the president when things that he is pushing forth in his agenda are helpful to our community, but they also know that I will stand up for them even if it's against the President of the United States.
New York's 11th District includes all of Staten Island and part of Brooklyn from Gravesend to Bay Ridge, which is where we caught up with Democrat Max Rose.
How you doing?
Rose was greeting commuters in the district bright and early in the morning.
We're looking forward to you being our next Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's coming up, all right? Have a good one.
The Afghanistan war veteran is trying to unseat Donovan by stealing plays from both the anti-establishment Trump playbook and the anti-corporate money Bernie Sanders playbook.
What we are trying to do, God forbid, is be clear and truthful. Because the truth is that the people who call this district home have been failed by a generation of politicians on both sides of the aisle.
Rose has been especially critical of Donovan's campaign finance records, specifically money he's taken from pharmaceutical, oil, and telecom companies.
I raised far more than he did in district last quarter. We're not taking a cent from corporate PACs, not a cent from federal lobbyists.
Donovan has fired back, trying to paint Rose as an outsider.
I think if you look at who's been supporting me, it's local community and organizations who have a vested interest in our community. My opponent's campaign finances, about 4%, have come from inside the district.
And our thanks to Henry Rossoff for that report. We had hoped to engage both candidates in a discussion of the issues, but both preferred to present their views separately. So I'm very pleased to introduce Max Rose right now. He beat out half a dozen challengers in the June primary to win the Democratic nomination for a seat the party has failed to secure for the past 10 years. He's an Army veteran, he served in Afghanistan, and he's running explicitly as a reformer. Welcome.
Marvin, thank you so much for having me.
You're running in purported Trump territory as a Democrat. He won 15% of the vote in 2016. How are you going to challenge and get into that?
Marvin, I don't want to make a habit of rejecting the premises of your question, but this is not Trump territory. It's not Democratic territory. It's not Republican territory. What this is, though, is this is America. This is a place that votes for the person, not the party. And God bless the people who live on Staten Island and South Brooklyn, because that's exactly the way they should be. They deserve a choice, and more importantly than that even, they deserve people running for office who are going to be truthful and clear about the way in which we as society can solve their problems, whether it's infrastructure or gun violence, some issues that I know we're going to get into today, hopefully.
Now, your opponent characterizes you as an outsider, a carpetbagger who just simply moved into the district to run for office.
Sure. So you've been around politics a long time. You're well aware that when people start to really fear that they're going to lose their seat, they start to act desperately and talk desperately. I have lived in this district for years. Before living in this district, I was in the active duty Army, defending my country, bleeding for my country overseas, which is, may I add, the greatest privilege of my life, the opportunity to lead soldiers in combat. They're real heroes. They showed us our true potential. So Dan Donovan, we got, what, 128 hours to go. Dan Donovan's going to say a bunch of things because he's throwing stuff against the wall, but he never talks about solutions to people's problems, does he? That's what we're focused on.
All right, I want to get to the solutions in a moment, but there's a lot of talk that if there is a blue wave, one of the first acts in Congress by Democrats would be to seek impeachment of President Trump. Would you support that, or could you work with the president?
Look, absolutely. I'm not going to D.C. with a pitchfork in my hand. Okay?
Could you work with them?
Of course I can. Of course I can. There needs to be independent investigations that are non-politicized if there's any sense that anything was done wrong. But what I'm concerned about when I go to D.C. is, quite frankly, saying, Mr. President, if you want to start to work on some of the things that you ran on, infrastructure, fair taxation, doing something about the opioid epidemic, I'm going to be the first one to raise my hand. You remember when the Republicans took control of Congress years ago? Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan got up and they said, our #1 objective is that the President of the United States, President Obama, does not win another term. That was not only wrong, that was un-American. Two wrongs do not make a right. I'm not going to be that type of elected official, and I'm not going to think about 2020 and 2019.
But that seems to be
get something done.
That seems to be what the Democrats are doing right now with this president.
I'm not running with any allegiance to the Democratic Party. I have allegiance to the people of Staten Island and South Brooklyn, and if it's not right for them, and certainly continuing this era of hyper-vitriol, hyper-partisanship, always thinking about your donors and special interests and the next election, that's not right for the people who call my district home, and I'm not going to get behind it.
Okay, we have such a limited time here. I want to hit to the issues. Where you stand, how are we going to make lives better for the people who are living on Staten Island and Brooklyn?
Sure, of course, and you see the stories of how people are suffering and so incredibly angry when you knock on their door, when you see them at the soccer game, when you go to the train station, people with 2-hour commutes. We have some of the longest commuting times of anybody in the country. And as we look for solutions, we can look to our history. We had an Interstate Highway Act which changed the very fundamental structure of this country.
So what
Let's
would you
have
do
an Interstate Highway Act of the 21st century, expanded expressways, a ferry on the South Shore, a massive capital infusion into the MTA, additional bus routes, not just new bus routes, additional buses, additional routes. This can dramatically transform people's lives. I knock on people's doors and they tell me their kids are afraid to go to school. We need to have it. Universal background checks in this country. AR-15s never sold ever again. We can actually save people's lives.
Yeah, but you got a Congress that gets a lot of support from the NRA. They've tried. They had a assault weapon ban for 10 years for the Democrats, and then back in 2004, it expired. It hasn't come back.
You get right to the heart of it. If we do not address the toxic and corrosive nature of money in politics, we won't be able to solve anything. Because what we do know for sure, if we have universal background checks, an AR-15 ban, the profits of the gun industry will go down, and the NRA is an agent of the gun industry. So we have got to get corporate money out of politics, special interest money out of politics, and I'm not waiting until I get elected. I'm not taking a cent from corporate PACs, not a cent from federal lobbyists, and I call on the Democratic Party, at least, to do that universally.
Now, you've raised about $4 million, over $4 million for your campaign.
Yes,
where those funds come from?
Well, it's certainly coming from within the district, an incredible grassroots network. And the key here, though, is that we have rejected toxic money. We have also rejected money from people whose positions I do not align with. I'll give you a great example. You mentioned impeachment earlier. Tom Steyer has said that impeachment is his #1 thing. He just wants people who are for that and nothing else. Tom Steyer sent in a donation. I sent it right back. Okay? Because money in politics cannot be the focus. What we have got to focus on here is how we can fix people's lives, how we can solve problems in this country.
Now, another crisis, and I want to get to the heart of things because it is, particularly in your district, the opioid crisis. Heroin. It's been really a crisis in the 11th Congressional District. What would you do to deal with that? It
has, and a crisis throughout the country as well. Last year, we lost 72,000 people to this crisis. Imagine if a gang had killed 72,000 people, or a virus, or a terrorist network. We would have seen a massive infusion of federal spending to save people's lives. But because this has been a silent killer, we haven't done nearly enough. We need an unprecedented investment in prevention and treatment and education, and yes, indeed, law enforcement as well, because far too many people are dying from fentanyl-laced heroin as well. We need to involve all aspects of society to truly invest and produce these holistic solutions that will put people on the road to recovery and a better life.
I'd like to ask more about that, but moving along, something else that you would have to deal with if you're in Congress, immigration reform. The president has taken one policy towards it, and now he's dealing with this caravan. How would you approach it?
Yeah, there needs to be, and there is precedent for comprehensive immigration reform passed in a bipartisan manner. We need to invest in border security, invest in our immigration courts, invest in our asylum policy, but also understand that we have to be a nation of common sense and values as well, which certainly involves a pathway to documentation. And it also, may I add, must accept the fact that if we are going to invest in our border security, which is absolutely important, it needs to be done substantially. It can't be done with political stunts.
How would you deal with these people who are trying to get across the border, the caravan right now? The president's sending in 15,000 troops.
Of course. Well, I just emphasized the fact that we need to invest, whether it is in technology or whether it is in border patrol.
Would you be sending troops in to stop them?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the reason being, okay, is by law, the United States Army cannot engage in any type of domestic law enforcement action. They cannot. We will have, if this goes through, more troops on the border on a temporary basis than we have in Iraq and Syria. Nearly double. That is the wrong use of national security resources, and it's a political stunt, and we see right through it.
Max, so many more questions, but I'm getting the cue that we've already had our time. So let me give you 30 seconds there to talk to the viewers and tell them why you would make a difference as the next congressman from the 11th District.
Sure. And thank you for the opportunity, and thank you so much for being here. You know, I've been running now for 15 months. And nothing is going to change over the course of the next few days. My goal is not to, and my request of you is not for your vote, but it's for your trust, because we have got to change politics in this country. And when we do so, when we start electing people with integrity and courage, people who reject corporate money and politics, we'll be able to think big again and dynamically again in this country. And I sincerely hope that I can earn your support along the way.
Max Rose, Democratic candidate for Congress for the 11th Congressional District. Best of luck to you, and we'll see you at the polls on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Congressman Dan Donovan. Welcome back, and joining me now is Congressman Dan Donovan. Welcome back to Picks Close-Up.
Good to be with you again, Marvin.
The latest poll shows a very slim margin. You have a 4-point lead, if you could believe polls, and this is going to be a very tight election.
I'm not sure, Marvin. We don't take any credibility with polls. One poll had me down by 10 in my primary. We won by 28.
Okay, the only one that counts is on Tuesday,
absolutely.
Of course. But the pundits suggesting that the Democrats just could win this one, the first time in 10 years to bring a Democrat back into this district.
Well, listen, Marvin, I've proven to the people of the 11th Congressional District why they should send me back to Washington. I've kept every promise that I've made to them. I've served them well with honesty and integrity, and will continue to do so if they give me the privilege to serve them again for another 2 years.
Well, your district still remains predominantly pro-Trump. But in many ways, you have distanced yourself from the president, haven't you? Well,
listen, the president's done remarkable things. Our economy is at all-time highs. I'm old enough, Marvin, to remember when we never thought the stock market would reach 10,000. It reached over 25,000. Unemployment is at the lowest rates it's been in anyone's memory. And we're being respected around the globe again. You know, one of the criticisms of candidate Trump was that he didn't have any foreign affairs experience, but look what's happened throughout the world in North Korea and in Iran. Nobody even talks about ISIS any longer because they don't exist. So he's had great accomplishments at times when some of the proposals, some of the legislation is going to be harmful to the people that I represent. I've stood up for the people that sent me there to represent them. I voted no on the tax plan because it's going to cause a tax increase for the people I represent. I voted no on the replacement plan for the Affordable Care Act because it was going to close one of my hospitals, and it would have harmed the senior citizens that I represent. So I support the president when it's helpful to the people that I represent in our nation, and I've also went against the president in times when it was going to hurt the people.
Now, Congressman, President Trump endorsed you in the primary. Has he endorsed you in the general election?
He has. Yeah, he certainly hasn't endorsed my opponent.
Has he come into the
yeah, he has, and he's touched. In fact, the White House reached out to us yesterday to make sure we're going to be okay in this election.
Now, one of the big issues in this Congress, it seems that the last time the Republicans said that they weren't going to do anything that would benefit Obama, this time it seems the Democrats won't do anything that would enhance President Trump. But one of the major issues that it's been talked about is immigration reform. It's still out there on the table, no action taking. Now have a crisis with thousands of people trying to immigrate into this country. How would you deal with it? What do you see as the ultimate solution to the immigration problem, and how would you deal with these poor people coming in from Honduras?
Well, certainly the immigration system is broken. We have young, talented people come to this country, go to our medical schools, train in our hospitals, and then we send them back, even though many of them like to stay and use their skills here for us. It takes too long for a law-abiding person to become a citizen of this country, somebody who follows our rules and regulations, somebody who's gone through the process. It takes too long. But what's happening now is that we have people on the other side of the aisle who do not want to see this president succeed at all. We had a proposal. We wanted border security, and we were going to take care of DACA participants. Every Democrat in the House of Representatives voted no. They wanted safety for DACA participants. We were giving it to them. They all voted no because there was border security involved in it. We have to secure our borders. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem.
To deal with this crisis right now, the president's talking about sending thousands of troops down to the border. Do you support that move?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. We can't have people, thousands of people illegally just running across our borders. We have a system in place. If you want to become a citizen of this country, we have requirements, what you have to go through. Rushing across this border thousands of people at a time is not one of those ways you become a citizen of this country. And the president is right to protect our borders.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you support the president's move to separate immigrant children from their families?
No, I didn't support that, but the president had no choice. Our laws said that the Department of Homeland Security can only keep a child in custody for 20 days. Afterwards, they have to do something with that child. They cannot keep that child in custody. So the president's choice was either to separate that child from the family or let the family who came across the border illegally, let them go. And he wasn't going to go back to the Obama administration's catch and release policies.
Here's an issue, particularly in the wake of that horrible massacre in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Again, the issue of gun control, another mass shooting, another situation, and yet Congress does not take any action, particularly on this assault rifle ban. It was in effect. It was in effect. The Democrats had it in effect from '94 to 2004.
Yeah,
the Republicans came in and they didn't renew it.
Yeah, it was a ban on manufacturing them. Marvin, it wasn't a ban on people possessing them. We saw that.
What about it? What's holding it up? You're in Congress. What about you and your colleagues?
Yeah, I think they have to find something that would be constitutionally upheld. The city of Washington, D.C. tried to ban a certain type of weapon from their citizens. It was deemed to be unconstitutional. But I have supported many what I believe to be reasonable restrictions without interfering with people's Second Amendment right. If you're on the no-fly list, you probably shouldn't have a gun. Pete King and I sponsored the no-fly, no-buy piece of legislation. Also, if you are on disability insurance because of a mental illness, you probably shouldn't possess a gun. And I think those reasonable restrictions don't infringe on law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment right to possess a gun, but it certainly will protect our citizens.
There seem to be, Congressman, so many reasonable things, as you point out. Yet, too many of your colleagues are getting their support from the NRA, and they're fearful to take a move. Well, you got to break that.
Yeah, that's not one of my problems. I have an F rating from the NRA, and they've never given a dime to my campaign. So, but you know, I think what we have to do is stop this. You'll see a lot of members of Congress this year, Marvin, are retiring. A lot of senior members, because they've never seen it as partisan in the past as they see it now. As I say, there are people that don't want the president to succeed at anything. I've seen members vote against something that would have been good for their own constituents just because they would have seen it as a win for the president. This has to stop. We went down there to help make this country better, not to stop a certain party from achieving what might be looked at upon as an accomplishment.
Okay. On that note, take a break. Want to come back, talk about some of the local issues impacting the people in your district. Stay with us as we continue our conversation with Congressman Dan Donovan. Back now with Congressman Dan Donovan seeking his third term for the 11th Congressional District. Let's talk about some of the issues that are of major concern to your constituents. Drugs, opioid crisis, heroin, big problem in Staten Island. How would you deal with it?
Well, I have dealt with it, Marvin. I was the district attorney for 12 years before I went to Congress. When I was the district attorney, we had the most successful drug treatment court in the state of New York. I started the pilot program of equipping every police officer on Staten Island with naloxone. Now every police officer in New York City has one, and it's been a model for the entire nation where we've saved so many people from overdose deaths. Also, we have, you have to enforce the laws. We have people peddling these poisons to our children, and we have to make sure we punish those people who are doing that. Since I've been in Congress, I got New York State to join a national network to avoid people from doctor shopping in different states. New York borders Massachusetts, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. A lot of people circumvented our system by going across the border, so we're able to do that. I drafted language that's in the fentanyl bill that will punish people who are peddling fentanyl, which is causing many of the deaths of our young people.
Now, your opponent, Max Rose, has made campaign financing a big issue in this campaign, claiming that you've been taking thousands and thousands of dollars from political PACs. Is that true? He says he's turned them down.
Well, he has taken money from PACs, Marvin. People have examined his financial records and seen that he's taken from PACs as well. So he's been lying about my record throughout the entire campaign.
What about you? Have you taken it from PACs?
Yes, absolutely. But here's what I have done. I have received money from people because they believe in the things that I believe in, and they support me because of things like the hospital Association in the state of New York supported me because I kept our hospital open when I voted against the Affordable Care Act. So people support me, Marvin, not because they're trying to buy my vote. It's because of the votes I've taken and the things I stand for that they believe helps our community.
What about the funds you received from Purdue Pharma?
Right, I didn't receive money from Purdue Pharma. Two people who work for Purdue Pharma must have came to an event of mine and donated money. When we found out that they did, I donated that to two wonderful organizations that deal with addiction on Staten Island immediately.
Now, you're on the Homeland Security Committee, and particularly the area for dealing with terrorism. New York, for a long time, has failed to get its fair share from Homeland Security from Washington. Where does that stand now? Is New York getting enough funds?
We are getting our fair share now. When the Obama administration cut Homeland Security money from New York City, myself and Senator Schumer in the Senate got that money restored. We are the #1 terrorist target on the globe, Marvin. I am a chairman of a subcommittee on Homeland Security that deals with terrorism policies. I'm in a great position to help protect our entire city, along with the people of the 11th Congressional District.
What position would you say we are in now, so many years after 9/11? How secure are we?
The men and women in New York City Police Department, the FBI's, Secret Service, as you saw with those mailings of pipe bombs, have done a wonderful job protecting our communities. We have to be diligent. We have to continue to fight terrorism. We have to continue to ask our citizens to help us identify things when they see them. But everyone should go on with their lives. We do a wonderful job protecting
Talk about
New
something
York.
that's affecting your constituents, transportation. They're talking, Max Rose is talking about the clogged highways. He's talking about MTA. What can you do from a position in Washington to help your constituents?
Right now I have a proposal in for an appropriation for $1 billion for light rail, $300 million for bus rapid transit for the people of Staten Island. We go back to Washington. I hope we pass that, and we'll be able to start moving this along.
And what did you see as the primary business coming up? If there's a blue wave, do you expect there's going to be an effort to
I don't. I don't. I think this is a lot of hype. I think the Republicans hold on to the House, maybe by not the majority we have now, but we hold on to it. And I think the Republicans gain seat in the United States Senate.
Okay. I'm told we got about 30 seconds left. I gave Max the opportunity. Turn to the camera, talk to your constituents, and tell them why they should return you to Washington.
I have represented this community for over 22 years in public service, district attorney for 12 years, in Congress for 3.5 years. I've done so with integrity and honesty. I have fulfilled every promise I've made, particularly people who suffer from Superstorm Sandy, the men and women who bravely went to the World Trade Center. We got the Zadroga healthcare bill. If you allow me the privilege to represent you for another 2 years, I promise you that same service of honesty and integrity.
Congressman Dan Donovan, good luck on Tuesday.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you. And that'll do it for our program for this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website, pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.